Yeah, it's that time of year again for us. Our annual homeowners insurance premium is due 50% more than last year. Well, we still have quite a bit of propane left. Didn't use much over the winter, a little over 60%. We started the winter with a little over 80%. Used mostly firewood this year. Owning your own home and property, it's part of the American dream. It's a big step to become a home and property owner. And if you have a mortgage on it, the lender usually requires that you do have insurance on it to protect the investment. But even if you do have it paid for, you still want to protect yourself from a loss, because it takes a lot of hard work to get to that point where you got it paid for. And if someone got hurt on your property, you'd want insurance for that too, against a possible lawsuit. Our solar grid tie agreement with the power company requires that we have at least $300,000 in liability insurance. So you seek out some insurance protection. And if you have a good imagination and a sense of humor, sometimes when you talk with insurance agents, it seems like they could have been through a gangster intimidation school. Like,
you've got a nice basic.
Yes?
We wouldn't want anything to happen to it.
And they can seem suspiciously concerned about your welfare.
We're your buddies. We want to look after you.
And you start to think of accidents that could happen around your place.
Of course, things break, don't they?
Yep. And thoughts also come about what could happen to all the buildings if a big grass or forest fire swept through.
Oh, it'd be a shame if someone was to set fire to them.
Set fire to them? Fires happen.
Things burn.
Our pond is pretty low this spring. It's about 3 or 4 feet lower than it was last spring. We didn't get much snow at all this winter, and most of it's gone now, so we're not going to get much more snow melt to fill it up. Hopefully, maybe we'll get some rain. With the first property that I ever owned, I didn't have any insurance at all. It was the mid-1980s. I was 21 years old, and I bought 121 acres of raw land on a contract for deed. I had very little money then, but the sellers trusted that I would just pay monthly, and I just had a couple $1,000s down on that contract. And in the contract, there was no terms about having insurance, even liability insurance, so I never even got any. I built a small log off-grid cabin there, and I lived there for quite a few years, and I never even did get any insurance, and I just took a risk. I didn't have any money, so people weren't going to be able to get really any much money out of me, and I had just maybe $1,200 into that cabin. Later in life, I had another piece of property with a modern house on it, and I had insurance for that because I had a lot of money into it. It was a big investment. And I got some quotes, and I started with one company, and the rates would go up a little bit each year. Not too bad. I think it was North Star that I first had. After probably like 6 years, I thought the rates were getting kind of high. And I started asking around different people what insurance companies they had and how they liked it. And a lot of them had State Farm, and they thought the rates were pretty good. So at that time, I switched to State Farm, and their rates were lower, and it seemed to go all right for a while. After about 4 or 5 years with State Farm, I thought that their rates were starting to get kind of high. And at the same time that I had homeowners with State Farm, I had Progressive insurance for auto insurance. And around that time, Progressive started offering home insurance, if you'd bundle your home and auto together. So I checked into that, and their rates were quite a bit lower, so then I switched to Progressive. Then I noticed that same pattern of rate increases with Progressive homeowners insurance. For the first 2 or 3 years, there were slight increases, nothing major, but after that, they really started jumping up the rates, like 30% or more. and I never even had any claims. And I thought, well, I guess it's time to switch insurances again. But then also at that time, I started having some serious health issues like leukemia and some other life changes. So in the end, I just ended up selling that property. Then I looked around for some more property and I ended up buying this place and I built here. And at that time, there's a lot of good talk about American Family Insurance. So I checked into that and their rates were pretty good if you bundled it together with a home and auto. So I switched everything over to American Family Insurance. For the first few years, there were those little annual percentage increases and they weren't too bad. But then I started noticing that same pattern again. And this was last year. They jumped up the rate by 40%. And, like before, I never even had any claims. So we met up with the American Family Insurance agent and asked him why we had such a big rate increase and what we could do about it. Well, the reason he gave was that the building material prices had gone up so much. But I didn't really buy that because in reality, the prices had dropped. And that's why we waited till last year to actually build our addition on the house. So we discussed what we could do to lower the rates. And the biggest thing that dropped the rates was increasing our deductible to $5,000. And there was also some little things we could do too. We went paperless. We went with the automatic withdrawal from our checking account to pay the premiums. And both me and my wife are over 55, so we took that defensive driving course. And that dropped the auto insurance rate about 10%, I think, of what it was. And so after all this, our rates were still a little bit higher than the previous year, but they weren't too bad. So we continued on with American Family. So we got by last year all right. And then this year we got the notice, and they had jacked up the premium to over 50% of what it was last year. Oh, and so we met up with the agent again, and he said, well, there's nothing he can do about it. And either you're going to have to pay the increase or else you'll have to go without their insurance protection. And that was their attitude. It was like they were doing us a favor by allowing us to buy their insurance protection.
Let's have your protection money.
I don't like that or else policy. That's why I try to put a little humor in this video, because it kind of reminds me of the mob trying to lean on somebody to get a little bit more protection money. We just got some trees growing in the greenhouse this year. Transplant them outside as soon as it warms up some more. Looks like they're growing pretty good now. But anyway, we ended up looking for some more quotes this spring, and we ended up back at Progressive now. And their rates are quite a bit cheaper. For this coming year, we're going to save about $1,500 with a home and auto from Progressive instead of American Family. This time we went with an independent insurance agent, and she seems to be pretty honest. And I asked her about their own personal home insurance and what they have and how they're getting along. And she said, because of this pattern of rate increases that I've been mentioning here, well, they know about that. And she says they change their insurance company every 3 years. And right now they have State Farm, and they don't even sell State Farm. They went across the street. So it kind of sounds like this pattern of premium increases pretty similar with all the insurance companies. So probably in 3 or 4 years, we'll probably be off looking for another insurance company to go with. It's a hassle, and I think a lot of people don't even want to mess with it, and they just keep paying those rate increases. But I don't know. I'd rather look into it and see if I can get a better deal. I don't like to be taken advantage of like that. Sometimes now I think back to when I lived in my little off-grid log cabin and how simple things were. I don't miss having to use the outhouse when it's 40 below, but in some ways it was more peaceful. So feel free to leave some comments, and thank you for watching.